When you've hooked something that is just not right, you want it gone, off the rug, on the floor. But if you rip out your mistakes too early, you may be destined to repeat them over and over. Sometimes the biggest part of knowing what to do is to know what not to do. Well, luckily, you've got that part down right. You've hooked something, it's not what you want. But leave it in for as long as you possibly can. I know it's going to be difficult, but you haven't earned the right to judge it yet. So, how do you go about earning the right to judge? Earning the right to rip out? One way is to hook enough. What that means is get colors next to it, get the background around it. It is amazing how much colors change when other colors are up next to them. The color that you absolutely loved doesn't work anymore because of the background. Or maybe that color you hooked in that you didn't like now works perfectly because the background is hooked in. And if you had ripped it out, you would still be struggling with that area. So don't rip it out right away. Make sure there's more than just a single row. You can earn the right to rip out with time. Wait a while. At a minimum, don't rip it out the same day you hook it in. Wait until the next day. Sometimes when you look at things with the fresh eyes in the morning, it looks different. Completely avoid the need to rip by not hooking in a whole lot of any one thing. Meaning, if you're hooking a flower, hook a pie shape through that flower. Hook some petals, part of the center. Don't hook every single petal all the way around until you know that color works with the background, with the border, with the flowers next to it. When you are ready to rip out only what you need to get the room to hook. Meaning if you've got 2 or 3 of them you need to rip out, just rip out one. And then hook that, and then evaluate. Sometimes what happens is once you've got something different hooked in, you actually like what you've hooked. There is a special way to rip out that is quote unquote correct. I don't put a whole lot of emphasis on technique, but this is one time where it just plain makes sense. When you rip out, you want to rip from the bottom. Now that doesn't mean you got to take it off your frame and turn it over and go through all that. What I typically will do is I'll grab the little end of the tail with my burling iron and start pulling about 2 or 3 loops. And that'll create a flat area, a loose bit of wool on the back that I can reach up underneath, pull on, and rip out from behind. Ripping out from behind helps to preserve the wool. It doesn't put it through quite as much damage as it would if you would yank it right through the entire front. Some wool, no matter how careful you are, cannot be saved, but most of them can. I'm including the 5-strip rule here only because I'm not sure where else to put it, and I think it's important and it needs to be a part of this lesson. The 5-strip rule is to hook 5 strips of background every time you sit down. So, in the morning, when you're ready to start a hooking session, hook 5 strips of background. You might even try a trick to remind yourself by laying the 5 strips on your frame the night before. When you hook those 5 strips of background in now, it's 5 strips of background you don't have to hook later. Your background will pretty much finish itself, and it'll be done before you know it. The most important thing is to simply have fun. Your rug cannot and should not be perfect. I'm going to say that again. Your rug cannot and should not be perfect. I always joke in my rug cooking workshops that one word that's not allowed is should. What color should this be? How should I do this? There's no such thing in rug cooking. Follow your heart. Do what you think is right. Stop worrying about what everyone else is thinking. Ripping out becomes a part of rug cooking. But the less you do, the more you get to keep of the work that you've created. Strategically hook your rug by hooking all over it and getting all the colors in place so that you can see how a color plan works before you get too far along. After all, if you've only got a small amount of it hooked, it's much easier to pivot and to make a slight decision and to make it slightly better. Instead of aiming for perfection, aim for the perfect experience. Enjoy the process of rug hooking.